Oh, hey, Alice. Guys, it's Alice. Alice, thanks for being here. You walked in at the perfect time. We got Heather Thomas for the Heather Thomas Band, and we got Cordie Nicole, and Neif's creeping around somewhere. Um, yeah, thanks for being here, Heather.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. You got a show this Wednesday, and you got another with The Absurd. You're playing drums with them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got a show with your band on Saturday?
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, the 20th.
Uh-huh.
And that's Saturday. Yeah. For some reason I was thinking the 20th was a Friday, but
Saturday.
at Underdog.
Underdog. Yeah, that's with my band, the Heather Thomas Band.
That's exciting. This is your guys' first show, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah, so I got here a couple months ago and I decided to put a band together, and yeah, we worked up a set and now we're going to play.
That didn't take you that long. Like, I mean, that's
I
obviously
got
work.
right to
You were
it.
hustling,
Yeah.
but still, yeah, you put something together. I'm very excited to hear that. I've heard some of your stuff on Instagram, so
Oh, cool.
with the whole act, that's going to be very exciting.
Yeah, I'm stoked. I haven't played a show in a while, so I mean, I've played shows, but not with my band.
Mm. And are these songs you wrote that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, all
Cool.
original.
I remember last time we were talking, we talked about Rudy's. Did you ever get a chance to check that place out?
No, I went one night and I didn't realize there was a cover, and I hadn't been mentally prepared to play a cover. You know how that is, where you're like, I'm just gonna go to a gym, and then I was like, oh.
This changes things.
Yeah, but I was also like, I should go when I have someone else to hang out with too, you know.
Yeah.
So I figured I would recruit some friends and make it out there.
It's definitely a cool spot.
Yeah.
There's not a huge jazz scene here, but they're keeping it alive.
Well, the thing with any city's jazz scene is that there's jazz players in every city, and there always have been, but it's not always what everyone's tuned into. You know, so
That makes sense.
any big city has probably a pretty ripping underground jazz scene that, you know, the jazz doesn't die in cities, I think.
Okay.
You know.
That's
Speaking of, if you're looking for a more underground scene, you might check out Monday Night Jazz at the local distro.
Mm.
I want to say it's off Jefferson.
Cool.
And it might be a little bit more low-key, more what you're looking for, a little bit more less...
Yeah, Rudy seemed very, like, high level,
It is.
professional,
It's very high
fancy.
level,
And I was like,
and
oh, I
this is
should.
more like a hop-in.
It's
I
a
want to
nice
say it's
place.
like $10.
Yeah.
You get a beer ticket.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very fun.
It's pretty
Like, everybody, like
Yeah.
folding chairs, like... Everybody's like hopping in, just bring your instrument, like very fun.
Cool, yeah.
Like
I love
dancing.
jam sessions so much. So, I've been to the one out at Flamingo and the one in Inglewood.
Okay. I haven't been to either of those.
Oh, they're fun.
So speaking of music scenes, you came from Seattle,
Right.
which has its own poppin' music scene we were just talking about before Alice got here.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously you were doing music before you came to Nashville.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm trying to ask is, did you have music like growing up in your what got you on that path?
Yeah, I mean, my parents listened to music, so there was always music around, but then I started tap dancing when I
Okay.
was 7.
That's cool.
Just, you know, my mom wanted to give me an activity that I could
Yeah.
enjoy, and so I got into tap dancing, which is very musical and rhythmic, and then I wanted to join school band when it was like 5th grade, you know, time for them to, you know, just see if anyone wants to play an instrument, and I was just like, yeah, of course I want to play music. And then I asked my parents, and my dad had played drums in high school, and he was like, well, if you want to play drums, I can help you with that one. And I was like, okay, sounds fun.
Nice.
And turns out it's the most fun, so I stuck with it.
Yeah. So in your band, you do vocals and also play drums, which is pretty neat.
Yeah.
Like that, they say that's a hard one to do.
It's very difficult. Yeah, it's not easy. And anyone who's good at it, that looks like they are a natural at it, has put in a lot of time and work to get there, because it is so much to think about, so much you're physically doing. You're using your whole body, and you're singing, you're using your voice. You have to like really focus on breathing well enough to have energy to sing and play at the same time. Yeah, it's very, very hard. But I mean, I practice it a lot, and the thing is, music is really challenging
Sure.
to learn, but you
Yeah.
can learn incredibly challenging things, and then after a while, those things become second nature to you.
Yeah, absolutely. That's discipline. Yeah, like it becomes
Takes a
muscle
lot
memory.
of discipline, yeah. It takes so much memory. I'm learning like 3 different sets right now for performing like this month, and I was just being reminded how much I rely on my memory to learn so much music.
Yeah, I imagine. That's a lot to keep up with.
It is, yeah.
And then, like, I guess a question for both of you guys. Do you ever, like, is there a song that you used to know that you don't know anymore? Or does that kind of just stay with you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's definitely songs where, like, I would have to look at the lyrics again before being able to sing and play it. I would have to remind myself what the chords were. Even some of my own songs where there's, like, you know, if I haven't played it in a long time, I have to like practice it before performing it.
So it sounds like it's not just learning the song, like it's also like a maintenance. Like,
yeah. I mean, if you're a band and you have a large catalog of songs, you'll often prioritize the newest songs or the songs that are the classics that everyone enjoys, or the songs that you know just like bring a room to their feet. And the other songs, like, it might be a really important song to you, but if you're not bringing it out all the time, you don't remember it as well sometimes.
Yeah, that makes sense. So do you have a formal education in music, or?
Yeah, I have a degree in percussion performance.
I assumed so.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. Where did you go to school?
Central Washington University.
Right on.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about that school, but that sounds
it's a good
nice
school. It's like a state school, and
Okay.
it's in Ellensburg, Washington. And they are known for having a really great music program, good jazz studies, and it's great place to go.
Was it just drums in school, or?
So I studied percussion performance, which covers like classical percussion all through like marimba, xylophone, timpanis, orchestral stuff, and then also jazz drums, and even marching band and drum corps stuff.
Nice.
Yeah, all of that.
You covered all your basics when it comes to percussion, like all that shit.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, up to like we're doing like percussion ensemble pieces like John Cage and Steve Reich and like modern composers and all that. Yeah.
You said music was like your parents listened to music obviously around the house. Like what stuck out to you?
Oh, I remember my mom really loved Billy Joel and Rod Stewart.
Okay.
And I loved their songs. I listened to, there was this classic Christian rock band, Petra. Had a bunch, and they just rocked, and that's why I just like liked the way the drums sounded, And that was when I started practicing, was just playing along to albums.
Okay. Switching gears completely.
Yeah.
Just gonna throw this at you. Do you have any inclinations about what happens to us after we die?
Any inclinations?
So I think it's important to note that no one on this planet knows the answer to that.
Right.
Some people propose that they do.
I like to entertain all possibilities.
Me too.
There's evidence to support any number of claims.
So I guess intuitively, do any seem more likely than others to you?
Yeah, certainly some seem more likely than others.
Okay, sure. Yeah, so what, can you give me an example of one that seems plausible? So, like, for me, the thing that doesn't seem plausible is I have a hard time imagining an actual death. Like, I think something continues. That's me. I don't have anything to back that or base that on, but that's, my intuition has a really hard time coming to grasp with that, I guess. I can't wrap my head around that. So, yeah, I was just wondering if you had any ideas. It's something I think about a lot.
I have no idea. I sometimes I think about it, but, I feel like I used to be really committed to believing that I knew what happened, and I think that it was really helpful for me when I released my need to have an answer to what I think is going to happen and just kind of accept that I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think, and there's also so much about, like, each one of us at some point in time, your physical life ends, but you're part of something so much bigger where as we all, like, grow and die, and like the people, it's the people that still are alive around you that continue living. And so like as we're not just like a single, it doesn't seem like we're so separate from each other.
Yeah.
That it's possible for, like,
we're all connected in some way. And
I just think that to me it's more interesting to not necessarily think about like what happens after you individually die, but to like recognize that the rest of life continues on and you're a part of it.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. For whatever brief window that we're here, like what we do echoes out for all time.
Right.
Yeah. It's there's significance for sure. I definitely think that there's meaning to life. What do you think about that? What is the meaning of life?
You can find meaning in anything, and you can absolutely, yeah. I think there's meaning everywhere, and I think that's what's kind of fun about being alive is like you find little pockets of it. You're like, oh, this means something.
I like that. Yeah. So it's like you come across these little like pockets of meaning, and it's like maybe the whole thing itself doesn't have meaning, but you can find fragments of meaning, something like that.
Sure, and then there's also just like you can observe patterns playing out all over the place, and whether it means something or not, it is something, and like you can kind of derive whatever you want from that in terms of meaning, but it is just all happening.
Yeah. The point of life is existence. It's to experience it. It's like there's no wrong answer. It's like if you were alive, then you did it.
Doing it.
Yeah. Do you have any ghost stories or
ghost stories?
Things you can't explain?
Sure. I might have to go back into my memory for this because I feel like it's been a while since I've thought about it.
Yeah. Take us down memory lane.
Yeah, okay. I remember that there was a studio that I took drum lessons at that my drum teacher told me was haunted. And because someone had been killed in it, like someone had died there. I don't know. I was a teenager, so maybe I made it bigger than it was. But, and things would happen like you'd be in the other room and you'd hear a crash and you'd go in the other room and like the whole shelf of DVDs looked like someone had just knocked them all down.
Okay.
Or like one time someone had been there at night recording and they heard a bunch of like children laughing and running around like down the hall. And they look and there's of course no one there. And then like he was sitting here teaching someone and he saw someone's pant leg look like someone was tugging on it. And he was like, "Are you seeing that?" And you look down and sure enough it looked like someone was just tugging on it.
This was a friend of yours that saw this?
This was at my drum teacher.
Oh, your drum teacher, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I remember one time being in there and playing and drums were next to each other and then out of the side of my eyes I saw that there was a tambourine and it had something on top of it and it had like levitated and was like shaking and then it like went down and that was freaky. We both were like, "Whoa, did you see that?"
Wow. That's crazy.
And then he had a student who she said that she had found out that she was like hearing voices and or like was talking to a doctor or something about voices she was hearing, and she was telling him about it and saying, "Well, I hear them all the time. I'm always hearing these voices." And he asked her, "Well, what are they saying right now?" And she goes, "Well, right now it's just children laughing and running up and down the halls." And so that I don't know any about what all that was, but it was just like a bunch of stuff centered around this one place where like some guy had died. But also like I was a teenager and so I was just like ready to like interpret anything. It's like, oh yeah, totally, it's ghost.
Yeah. Oh, that's it's like a rite of passage. It's like late teens.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So what do you have? Okay, so having had that experience, obviously we don't know, but do you have any ideas about what that could be? Do you think it is a dead person, or what do you think?
I think that if we have a lot of energy reverberating through a place, I think that it's possible that energies that are really strong can kind of still affect you, and like, you know, whether it's something physical, like, I mean, you could find any number of reasons that those DVDs got knocked over, but if there's an energy in a place where, like, maybe there were a bunch of kids running up and down the halls for a long time, like, I don't know how energy works, maybe those still exist in that place. I don't know.
I think that's the important thing to note is we don't know, so it very well could be that.
Well, and there's also just that our minds are generating these things. Like, someone's hearing children in the hall, like, that could also just be happening in your mind.
Yeah, that's actually, it's funny you bring that up, because I think when we talk about, like, so I've done a lot of what I would consider, like, work with spirits, whether that means I'm interacting with, like, a part of myself or some other external force. I can't really say for sure, but I think that is English failing us. I think it's actually something, it's neither and both. I think when you have an imaginary friend, I think that exists outside of you, just not in a way you can, like, just not in this plane. So I think imagination is a dimension, and what you imagine exists.
Especially if you speak it out loud.
Yeah, that's manifestation. And so, like, that being said, I think that realm is infinite. The space of imagination is boundless. So anything you could possibly conceive of already exists. So when you conceive of it, when you have that idea of an imaginary friend, yes, you invented it, but you also but you also just reached out to something that already exists.
Oh,
so
sure.
it's a handshake, and I think
right.
What's inside, or like what's internal and external, I don't really know how to describe it exactly, but as humanity, we need to look at that deeper, because I don't think we've quite got it yet. It's not external or internal. It's like paradoxically both somehow.
I think ghosts could also kind of be like the past, present, and future are all existing at the same time.
Right, that's kind of what I was thinking when I was saying, like, different energies in a space. Like, maybe some of that is, like, it's still kind of happening, you know.
If time doesn't exist and energy can never be destroyed, that makes sense.
What would happen to it? Yeah. There's that, help me with this, Neif. There's that Jim Morrison, after he died, they did the poetry.
An American Prayer.
Yeah. You like the Doors?
Yeah.
So Jim Morrison, after he died, like, he had done a bunch of spoken word stuff, and after he died, the Doors put music to these poems he wrote. And one of the poems, he's if I don't tell the story correctly, correct me, but he's a young child, and he's told this story in interviews too, but it's most laid out in this poem he wrote.
Well, it wasn't really even in the poem. I mean, he kind of just throws it in there in between. It's part of a song that he put in, and it happened to be part of something he was reading off. I mean, American Prayer is a bunch of poems all put together, so nobody knows if he intended them to run that way.
Oh, okay.
And the music they put behind them lined up with some of the lyrics from some of the songs came out of some of that poetry. And in Peace Frog, he actually says, Indians scattered on dawn's highway, bleeding, ghost cloud, a young child's fragile eggshell mind.
Yeah, so basically...
His discussion, he said he thinks that one of those, or several of those.
Well, back up a little
Indian
bit. He was on a road trip with his parents going through the desert when he was a young kid, and then somewhere along the way they found a bunch of dead Native Americans.
There was a truckload of them that had gotten in a wreck, and it threw them out of the truck, and so they were all scattered on the highway, dead.
And it had just happened not long ago when they drove up on it.
He said that he thinks that because he was a child, and that the mind of a child is so open that way, that souls of those Indians, some of them jumped into his soul and were still there.
That's how he ends it.
Because the way they died was so tragic that spirits were just running around freaking out.
So and he ends that particular poem. He says, "And they're still there."
Yeah. Well, that's what. Well, that right there is actually the clip of the interview. Is when he said
Oh, really?
that. Yeah. The poem is just Indians scattered on the Dawn's Highway
I got you.
bleeding.
Okay.
And that's a breakdown in Peace Rock.
So I'm paraphrasing here. Thank you.
Yeah, it's Morrison. A lot of people debate whether or not a lot of what he told the press was true because a lot of it was found out.
It's a crazy story, though. It makes me. I think about that a lot. Have you ever used a Ouija board? It's an interesting thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm pretty convinced that there's external forces beyond what's visible.
Sure.
What do you think about extraterrestrials?
I'm open to it.
Okay. Do you think aliens have interacted with humanity in the past
I don't know.
or currently? Okay.
Seems
Fair enough. I don't know
seems
either.
possible.
Yeah. I guess all of the questions I'm asking you, I don't have the answer either.
Yeah, no, the longer I live and the more things I learn, the less I'm convinced I have any clue at all.
Same. I've like the more you learn, the more questions you have, not answers.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm right there with you. I like to think about it, but I don't have any answers either.
What is the most difficult thing you faced in your music journey, and how did you overcome it?
The most difficult thing I feel like I just continue to face is that it's really challenging to like develop a steady income stream. But that also was like really affected by the pandemic when I lost all like the gigging that I was doing. So that's like not, but even when things were like up and rolling in Seattle, it was always like you just have to work really hard to make that happen. And I don't know if I've overcome that. I'm still just like working on trying to improve how I do what I do. But yeah, it's challenging because I want to put out albums and those cost a lot of money. And so like I haven't, it hasn't been easy. Anything that I've managed to release has been the result of like a lot of trying really hard and putting things together, and it costs a lot of money. So that seems hard. And I felt like if I just kept practicing and getting better and perfecting music, I would like get better at that part, but I'm still not very good at that part. So
we were talking about discipline earlier, and this is something I think about a lot too. So like if we were to compare musicians today to like say like the 60s or the 70s, obviously we have so many tools available to us, right? It's like you can make specific sounds more easily, and you can also make new sounds that weren't available at all.
Yeah.
And it's like, so we
can make AI sounds and
yeah.
Yeah.
So music has the technology with music has progressed just like everything else.
Yeah.
The catch-22 with that is, as technology progresses, we also have more distractions. So like my mom plays piano. She's an excellent piano player, and she tried to teach me piano as a kid, and I just never picked it up because I had video games I could go play. I didn't have the discipline to do that. Do you have any advice for aspiring artists about how to avoid distraction and to form that discipline?
Yeah, I would say prioritize the most fun music that you cannot wait to play every day, and like spend your time doing that. I think a lot of the reason why people don't pick up piano is because you're learning simple melodies that you would never jam to in your own time. And so especially we treat young children as though they can't understand complex concepts, but music is a language. And so when you're teaching someone a language, it's like, I'm asking you to read a children's book when you're like, I'm already like solving complex problems in my video game world, And so I think that the way to get into music is to really start with music that you're the most stoked about right now. And as soon as you feel like you have something else you want to add to that or bring in, follow that path, and don't feel too attached to having to learn one thing one way, but just follow what's the most exciting to you. Like in your mind, when you're like, if I could just snap my fingers and be the most ripping musician in the whole world, what would it sound like? And then head that direction. If it's like you're in a like a kickin' arena band, or if you're just like blazing on like some Charlie Parker changes, or whatever the music is that like you're stoked about Kendrick Lamar right now. If you're like, that's the kind of music I want to make, that's where you can spend your time. And not like work towards that hard stuff, but just like go ahead right away for what is the most exciting. Because all of music is difficult. It's going to be just as hard to learn a piece of Beethoven as it is to learn the Beatles song. You know, so go for what is the most like exciting to you musically, something you really vibe with. Sometimes I just start with like, what's the song in your head right now? There's always a song playing in your head, right?
Yeah.
You know, and so, yeah, that's how I would avoid it being like too dull and boring. Like, you can also pair that with like, I'm learning how to play an instrument, so I'm committed and I'm dedicated to this regimen, but when something fun inspires you, go for that too. You know, you can always come back to the things that you're working on, the techniques, but those techniques are also in the coolest music that you know and love.
Yeah.
You know, so you might as well go for that. And that's how I think you can stay inspired. And then it's like, you know, you suck at it at first, but like by the time you're really good at that song, it's like now you can play that awesome song.
Yeah.
You know,
That's really good advice. Don't necessarily go with
don't
the
dumb
basics.
it down for you. Don't like, if you're not obsessed with AC/DC, don't learn an AC/DC song as your first song. I mean, like, go ahead if you that's what you want to play like. But if like you're just doing that because you think it'll be easier than learning the Who song that you want to learn, like, go ahead, go for the Who song. Like, they're both going to take 2 or 3 months of hard effort to like learn if you're a beginner, maybe even years. So you might as well start with something that you're really stoked about.
That makes sense.
I think that's so true. There's so many times where I walked away from guitar because, you know, it's discouraging sitting there just playing scales when, you know, like somebody showed me a power chord shape, and, you know, being able to sit there and just write a song and like move it around and have fun. Like I was able to like, you know, enjoy myself, and I've been able to have enough fun that I actually feel like I have the confidence to maybe stick with it long enough to come back to it and take the time to work on the scales. And
well, and then like when you're in the middle of learning this song that you were just like, oh, this is fun, let's go this way, there's a scale in that song that you can practice within that song. So like maybe you just take the time to go like, oh, so I'm playing an E, well now I'm gonna play this guitar riff, and then I'm going to practice that scale in E like I was playing along with that guitar riff. And now it's not just a scale, it's like how you're going to move around in the key that you're playing in, you know? And I think we think about scales like they're this thing that's separate from the music we're learning, but scales are all over every melody. Once you get familiar with where 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 are, then you can figure out that, oh, I'm just moving around those notes this whole time.
Yeah.
And for me, like I'm learning how to play scales on the piano right now, and you know, because I'm trying to expand what instruments I can perform with, and I've been finding that like just slowing way down and like taking the time to work out whatever the scale is for the song that I'm on, then all of a sudden the melodies that I'm hearing in my head, I know where those notes are now. And my fingers know when to cross over, because that's the reason you're doing your scales, is so that your hand placement is smooth as you move up and down the piano. And like, how cool does it feel when you can all of a sudden do that? Like, well, I don't know, I haven't gotten there yet, but that's what I'm working towards. Is just like the patience to find the stuff that's in the music that you already are just living in your brain all the time, like whether it's your own music or just the stuff that's sticking in your ear this week.
It doesn't sound like you have a hard time finding that discipline, like that fight to do it.
Yeah, for me, I am just like a lifelong drummer, musician. Like I started so young, and like I had good teachers, and they taught me how to practice, and I just had so much, I was required to learn so much music throughout my life that like you have to learn how to practice something from not being able to do it at all. And so that's just how it happens, is you start slow and you work your way kind of out from there.
Yeah. Do you have any like, what are some non-musical inspirations for you, like pieces of art that have affected you deeply? Books, movies, what have you?
Yeah.
I'm a big movie buff, and we actually have a book club on the podcast too.
Yeah.
Every month we read a book. This month we're reading Wizard of Oz, so I'm really deep into that.
So I read a book. So a book that inspired me musically specifically was I had joined this thing called the Bushwick Book Club. It's based in Seattle. Well, it started in New York, and then there's one in Seattle. And it's a group of songwriters all read the same book in that month, and then write songs about the book.
Oh shit!
And then everyone gets together and performs,
That's
for
awesome.
an audience. Yeah. And so I heard that idea, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. I want to do that.
That is so cool. Yeah.
And so I don't remember if I hit them up or if they hit me up, but they asked if I wanted to do the next one, and it was the book Blood Meridian by Cormac McCarthy. And he was like, well, okay, I'm sorry this is your first one. This book's actually really super violent and gruesome, but it's a great book. And I was like, okay. And sure enough, it's like it's a terribly violent, gruesome, very hard to process book, but very beautifully written. Cormac McCarthy's kind of like has this really minimalist way of writing where it's very descriptive and the imagery is just like pounding. But anyways, I wrote a song based on that, and because I wanted to write something that was as gruesome and violent but also beautiful. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, and so that song is ended up on this album that I'm about to release.
Oh, cool. Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
You playing that on the 20th?
Yes, actually,
Hell
yeah.
What's the title?
Blood Meridian.
That's the song title.
That's the
as well?
song title. Yeah, and I went back and forth because I was like, well, that's what I called it at first because it was based on the book, and then I was like, that's kind of a little bit intense of a name for a song, especially songs kind of pretty, and that those words aren't even in the song. But then I was like, I feel like anyone who liked that book or who was a fan of Cormac McCarthy's work would appreciate this song.
Yeah.
Like, it would really, they would get it. And so I was like, if I kept the title, it might make it easier for people who are a fan of it to find it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went back and
I always
forth.
think it's kind of cooler to put a title to a song that it's not in there at all.
Yeah, if you can be clever
Oh,
enough
for
about
sure.
it so the title is like its own statement. I'm not usually that clever. Usually my song title is like the first lyric in the song.
Right. Sometimes I'll end up with the writing title because I never could figure something else out, and then it's so weird and far off of what the song is that it makes it seem like it's more cryptic, and they're like, what was he really mean? And it's like, I never came up with a title.
Yeah.
What do you think is the greatest threat to humanity?
Humanity.
I like that. That's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Humanity is
We have nothing to fear but ourselves.
Yeah. I mean, I would say there's a lot of threatening things out there to me, but I'm the one doing the most damage to myself. You know,
Same.
like there's
Yeah.
I can look out and be like, what are all these problems? Why are they coming at me? But at the same time, I can be like, it's all I'm generating every one of my own problems.
It's definitely like, for better or for worse, it's a very strange time to be alive. To be
It's
on
fascinating
this rock.
time to be alive.
Yeah.
It's epic.
There's a lot going on.
Yeah.
It's so pivot, and probably every generation has felt like this, like not just us, but like it feels so pivotal in history. Like, and I think objectively it is, right? Because it's like 500 years ago, the young adults of that time were probably like, this is it. This is like cutting edge of whatever it was at the time. But I think we can say that objectively because we've had automobiles for like, what, 100 years? Something like that? 100
Right, and think
100
about
years,
how
Neif?
that
Something like
changed
that?
things.
You remember, Neif, when were automobiles invented? It's been a short amount of time, is my
They
point.
tell us that
They're actually as old as dinosaurs.
actually,
I was gonna say, they
dinosaurs.
just found fossils
Of a car.
Model Ts.
A VW bug.
Yeah.
Hey, I watched the Flintstones, man.
Yeah.
That's historically
Historic.
accurate.
Extremely.
What were we talking about? But,
Threads.
oh yeah. So so not just that, but we've harnessed electricity in like the last 200 years, and then the internet's been like I remember dial-up, so it's not before my lifetime, but like pretty much, like.
And then we made reality television.
That was a big change.
Yeah. So it's definitely, I think, objectively, we are at a very pivotal point in history. It doesn't just feel that way; it is that way.
So here's something you might find fun is I started working on this idea where I had read a couple books that opened my eyes up to some of like the processes and the ways things are changing, and I was thinking about how interesting it is that like the way that species evolved from like before cellular structures to like when there were cellular structures, and then like for a long time that's all there was like single celled beings. And then the next evolution was when they learned how to like clump together as multicellular organisms, right? And then a huge evolutionary step was when all of a sudden a cellular structure, they would form their own organs, right? And the thing that made the change from it being multicellular to its own organism was like a nervous system, where now the cells can communicate to each other.
Oh shit! Okay.
So the fact, as soon as cells were able to communicate with each other, not as soon as, like after a long time, then they organized into like a single organ that could, like, if you stub your toe, your body knows right away. It doesn't have to like transfer that information cell by cell.
That's exactly how we design computers.
So the way that evolved, right, is the same way as you get like single organisms like people, and then they organize into like multicellular organisms, like a community, like a tribe, like a traveling pack of humans that can survive because they're sharing information and resources. You get bigger than that and they start to develop organs, and now you have like civilizations with their own, like, this is the hospital takes care of the health, and this is the garbage person takes care of garbage, so that not every single cell has to take out the trash for the whole city, right? But then what happens is now you have a bunch of those, right? You have a bunch of different civilizations, and they're communicating within each other. But then all of a sudden what the internet does is it introduces this nervous system where now something across the world happens, somebody gets shot, and now I over here am aware of it. Like when I stub my toe, my brain knows right away.
That's fascinating. So it is a giant nervous system.
It's a giant nervous system, and so what comes after the nervous system develops is a conscious, like,
a hive mind.
Yeah.
Wow.
So humanity could be experiencing an evolution where not only are we evolving as cellular species, but we could also be evolving into a larger type of organism.
Holy shit, you just blew my mind.
Yeah. When I started thinking about it like that, I was like, whoa, because it didn't used to be like that. Now all of a sudden when there's fires in California, we know about it, and not just because, but because it's relevant to us, because we are part of the same system.
And that does something weird to us too, because it's hard to expand your empathy that far. It's impossible to expand your empathy to everyone because you literally don't have that much empathy. You can't feel the loss of every loss. You literally can't, and it'll overwhelm you and make you where you just shut things off.
Compassion fatigue.
Yeah, compassion fatigue. Thank you. And that's.
I like that term.
But yeah, that is fascinating. I think we are also headed to some sort of singularity hive mind. I think Neuralink has a lot to do with it. Once we start connecting ourselves to the computers in an even more way, because we're already cyborgs, right? We all have cell phones.
I already knew you were gonna say that.
Yeah.
Predictive text feature.
Yeah, but once we got it like implanted in our heads, we're gonna be thinking so quickly that I think like what happens is we resolve all our differences to the point where we resolve our personalities and we're just the same person now.
We will never resolve all our differences.
I think we might.
If it were ever to be possible, there's like a unique opportunity where like it could happen though.
Yeah, who knows? So do you think do you think so what you explained about the multi cell organisms evolving into organs and like organic matter creatures, do you think that is that an adequate explanation for you for how like consciousness and sapience arose. How do you think human beings came to be?
Mm-hmm. I think the same process that created all beings, and I don't think that humans are as different from
Okay.
the rest of creation as we like conceptualize ourselves as.
I guess I do particularly think of us as separate and different. I didn't
Why?
mean to cut you off. So I think it actually doesn't even come down to consciousness. Neif actually helped me realize this, but it's fire. We've harnessed fire, which no, I mean besides chimps, nothing else has thumbs, so like it'd be difficult for them to do that.
I think we're keeping a lot of resources away from other animals that, like, if you gave monkeys fire, they would all of a sudden have fire. If you taught monkeys how to shoot guns, they would be shooting guns.
Well,
the,
sure.
The idea being is that we would have to teach them.
Yeah.
We weren't taught, or were we?
Or were
and if we were, Prometheus did it.
I mean, we were taught
According to legend.
generationally.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't know that being taught invalidates the evolution of advancing.
Well, right, but what
We're
I'm
all
saying is,
raised.
in compared to humans, who taught us to
I guess,
harness
yeah,
fire?
I'm trying to
'Cause animal
pinpoint the
instinct-
difference, though.
Yeah, animal instinct, all
I think
animals
that
will run from it.
you can find any number of differences, and you can choose any one to
Right.
separate us from others because there are like infinite differences. But I think that there's way more to be found in what isn't so different about how it is really
Right.
a very similar process happening
Sure.
across all of the universe.
Well,
So-
that's in essence what I meant by that is that most of the differences that we see between human and animal are not really that different.
Mm-hmm.
The only real difference is that we have managed to get over our fear of fire
Mm-hmm.
and harness it, because fire itself, when you just think of it, it's light and warmth, but it's also our harnessing of energy. It's why we have electricity. It's why we could shape metal. It's why we could do
It's
everything.
basically the harnessing of fire led to all of our technological
all of our technology.
advances.
We were able to survive because of it, and we were able to get where we are because of our
But what?
ability
But are
to
we
harness.
talking about like sentience and consciousness?
Kind of. I guess back to the core discussion. Do you think humans arose the way we are was a natural selection evolution?
Yeah, I disagree with you guys as well. I think that we don't know if animals have consciousness because we can't communicate with them same as we can.
Well,
I
we
can't
actually do
communicate
know
with
that certain animals do, like
I-
dolphins
I-
and dogs.
I didn't.
Yeah.
I wasn't talking about consciousness.
And we can't say that we're more advanced than them because we've worked very hard to exploit and control them, and we don't know what they're capable of.
Oh yeah, I wonder
Well, I
if
wasn't-
we would have.
right.
I wonder if we would have evolved more similarly if we weren't like actively keeping.
But what made us do that to begin with?
Greed.
What made us that way?
I think it was a survival thing. I think it
Right,
was
okay.
that we needed to eat food to live, and so we
Right.
figured out how to be the top predators.
Okay, so it is
Right.
not. See, I have a hard time,
No.
and I'm not. This is for me. I have a hard time rectifying sapience with natural selection because I don't see how it leads to survival.
Oh,
it seems like
interesting.
an off thing for me because
What
it's
part
like
of it?
so like because we have these.
Oh,
super,
but here's why it was. It was because that evolution from single cell organism to multicellular organism, it was when we evolved to be able to work together, was when we developed the evolutionary advantage. It wasn't that we were evolved to be more severe predators. It was that we learned how to work as a team to tire something out to kill
Right.
it.
that's a
That-
really good. That's a really good
but
explanation
that's-
for
that's
why it would be that
also
way.
seen in a lot of other.
Well,
pack
so
animals.
here's so
Wolves
if
do
you
it.
if you found that
And
in
my point wasn't that I never said that animals don't have a consciousness.
sure.
That wasn't my point. Was merely that our only real difference and what led us to our advancements
Mhm.
is because we harness every animal other than us. You pull a stick of fire out, it will not mess with you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can ward off a bear with a torch because
So
they don't
how did
understand it.
Yeah, so how did we do that?
Theory, though, personally.
Well, you know, they
Yeah, sure.
that,
Yeah, fair.
yeah. But what I'm
You
saying in general. you
Well,
know,
so I would add to that then it is possible if we were able to evolve to past our fear of fire,
Right.
and I do think that is where most grand evolutions happen, are at a place where something everyone else is afraid to do, someone does it.
Right.
Well, who's to say there couldn't be another evolution like that? What are we afraid of right now that someone else could come in and be like, well, humans are afraid to do that, but this
Death.
other species comes
Right.
in.
And that's what I'm saying. Is we just haven't seen that. You know.
But we could also, I think we take for granted the fact that we're not extinct.
Right.
And that there could be any number of
yeah.
extinction events in the near 100,
Mhm.
200,000
extremely
million
weak.
years.
Just like
Or in our lifetimes.
Or in our lifetimes.
Yeah.
And it's not unprecedented, and it's not
Yeah.
unusual for this planet for a massive species to
But we also
the
have this
conditions
weird
change.
thing that we are frail in
Yeah.
the wild. Most every animal other than us can kill us easily.
Yeah.
But, and not in comparison to us, because we don't have claws that can do things like even a raccoon. You know,
That's true.
just on your own.
All
raccoon,
it would take for
yeah.
us to be taken over by other species is for any one of them to organize.
Exactly.
If all of a sudden the birds were like, all right, no more people, like one at a time, they would
or the
kill all of us.
cockroaches.
Yeah,
For
all it
them
would take
to band
they
together.
haven't. That's the evolutionary thing that they
Right.
haven't done that we have, is that they learned how to work
Well,
together like that.
Well, that's the thing is, I think that part of what made us survive this frail against animals that do know how to do that, like pack wild predatory animals, wolves, everything that we had to worry about on the tundra, the only reason we got around it was fire.
Mm-hmm.
Because no matter what tool you build, a spear, bear's gonna take you out. But fire, animals are like, we don't want nothing to do with that. We just don't want to do with that.
But there was a point in history where humans were afraid of fire.
Exactly.
But
And
what
that's
happened?
what I'm saying. What happened?
I don't know,
But
but there could
could it
become
happen
a point
again?
in history where animals were not afraid of fire. We don't know
Right.
what's going to
Well,
happen.
And that's what I'm saying. Then they have to sit down. And the other thing is not just being the fear. We know how to create it.
You never
can
know.
sit
Maybe
down
they
and do
figure that shit out.
They might,
Maybe.
but they haven't yet.
Well, no,
And then we would have our answer if
Now,
they
they
did.
figured out a lot
animals
of
do
other
know
stuff.
how to use fire. So, like, you see birds moving twigs that are on fire to other places to spread fire.
No shit, really?
Really?
Yeah, it's a thing you can see birds do.
I'm
Wow.
gonna have to Google this shit.
That's
fascinating.
I'm sure an animal started a fire.
Holy
what
shit.
if all the cats
Uh-oh,
are
oh
like,
God.
you know
Now we
what?
gotta worry,
Let's
the
fuck
birds
up all
are
their
gonna-
Well,
duck
birds
work.
aren't real. They're a
Well, so
government
they freeze
conspiracy.
to
That's what
death.
it
so
is. It's the
They're
birds.
The
all
thing is,
CIA drones.
We have the technology
Right.
to begin to start communicating more effectively with
Oh, yeah.
animals. Like, there's dogs are talking to people now with the little buttons, and they're
Mm,
understanding each
yeah.
other. Like, we know how to communicate a little better. But the thing is, if we were really going to listen to the animals, like, we have an terribly tyrannical relationship to all
Yeah.
species outside of humans,
There-
and if we were able to communicate, there would be some reckoning that would need to be done.
Right.
Because,
Yeah.
you
All the
know,
animals we have
all
are
of a sudden,
domesticated.
birds have rights because
and-
they can talk to
well,
us.
and because the thing is, birds do have rights. Birds are free.
Yeah.
You know, and that's and we would have to reckon with that.
Yeah.
We
The only
might-
reason we
You
literally
ever
the only
seen
reason we
Alfred
don't is
Hitchcock's
because we don't
The Birds?
communicate with them. In that
That's
way.
what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not because we couldn't.
Yeah, there's
Well, that's
a
the thing.
They
carnivorous
choose not
bird
to.
called the black kite.
we only really communicate with the domesticated animals.
Yeah.
It's not confirmed, but they were witnessed to carry smoldering sticks to
That is
deliberately
crazy.
start fires
That is fucking insane.
Uh-oh.
So
and
what the
capture
fuck?
escaping insects
So yeah,
and
they
rodents.
they do it to
to
light on
smoke out
fires.
prey.
Oh, wow.
So that
Hey.
okay, now that
That's
is evolution.
smart.
Definitely.
But see,
have to
evolution
learn
is
to build it.
constant. It's not
Apparently
something
they
that,
saw
so the
fires
fact
and
that we're
smoldering
evolving
sticks.
in this new
You gotta learn to
arena,
build
like
it.
we're
Yeah, gotta learn to
evolving
build it.
connections that didn't exist before.
That's what really
But so is
worry.
everything else is also still evolving, you know.
Yeah.
And we have a huge impact on the environment because we're doing so much to create.
Mhm.
You know, that is one of the things that humans do well, is that we imagine things and then we create them.
Yeah.
Well, birds use plastic bags to build their nests now, and it kind of disgusts me if I see, you'll see like a bird's nest somewhere, and you'll see like.
But birds are just using
But-
whatever
Whatever's
materials are
available.
around.
But
That's
it
what they
doesn't
always
disgust
do.
me of them; it disgusts me of us because that's just how.
That's the
bad-
environment they're
that's-
having to work with.
You know,
Yeah.
that's how badly we're literate.
So while we're on this,
Mm-hmm.
so I get what you're saying about the like.
Have fun in the Springwater.
Oh, see you, Cordie. Thanks for coming.
Plug.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm playing the Springwater.
Yeah.
It'll be when this comes out. It'll be that same night.
Yep.
17th.
Yep. Yeah. Catch Heather with Absurd Wednesday or tonight at Springwater, and then this Saturday at Underdog.
Underdog on this
right.
Saturday, 8/20, August 20th.
Yeah.
The Heather Thomas Band. It's our debut Nashville show.
Or
It's
maybe
my
it's Heather
first
and the
show.
Toms.
Oh right, Heather and the Toms.
Maybe.
I don't know.
I guess you just have to show up and find out, Alice.
If we get T-shirts printed, then you'll know.
Yeah. So I get what you're saying about how it, like the cells coming together to. That would be an explanation for how consciousness arose. Is
right. Is actual connections.
Because we're working together,
Yeah.
and that helps us survive. So that makes sense to me, but it doesn't make sense to me in a natural selection way, because natural selection is intelligent, but it's not conscious. So it doesn't have the foresight to look ahead, right? So it's like...
Well, yeah, it's literally responding in real time to its environment.
Right. So I don't understand how that leap is made.
Which leap?
How does natural selection lead to sapience? And you already answered that question, but I guess I don't understand how that decision was made. If natural selection, the intelligent process known as natural selection, if it decides we're going to develop bigger brains and consciousness so we can collaborate together, how did it decide that?
I don't think it decides it. I think if you're implying that there's a decision being made, but I think that those brains are just naturally evolving out of necessity, out of just
path of least resistance.
No, I don't think
Survival.
Natural selection's conscious.
Right.
I'm doing a bad job explaining that.
Sure.
Why, out of necessity, why would those things interact that way?
I think that it just worked. I think that when there was a bunch of cells going around, once there were like 3 or 4 of them that could like surround someone and eat it, I think that they just started kind of doing that. They started kind of clumping together. And the way that cells pass information is through their membranes. And so when you have 2 cells, they can pass information through here. But once you have 4 or 5 or 6 cells, you can now pass information from 3 or 4 cells across. Right? And so I don't think that there was a decision that was made. I think that just as they continued to interact, it just naturally, they just started becoming more and more. And then once it reaches past a certain point, it no longer, like, it naturally just things start evolving to take care of certain roles. And I think, like, the first roles would have been, like, dissecting and expelling waste from eating, right? And then I don't know exactly where all the organs form in like what order, but that is how organs form.
Sure. Yeah, that makes that the only thing that I'm really struggling with is consciousness.
I think every cell is conscious. And I think
there's a name for that. Panpsychism, I think. Sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I guess I don't know if I believe I guess I don't have a working definition for what I believe consciousness is, because I'm kind of experiencing it. Mm-hmm. But I think that, the ability to think and develop thoughts, I think that that's a result of a whole colony of conscious beings forming through all the information that they're passing through, all their processes, forming a perception of where they are.
Okay. Maybe I have a misunderstanding of how natural selection works then. Are a lot of things tried, and the ones that survive...
Infinite things are being tried, so there's just like nothing but reproduction happening and mutation.
So I guess I'm assuming, which is incorrect obviously, but I was thinking that it's like everything is trying the most optimal form of survival.
It's totally random.
Okay.
It's like, and it's not totally random. It's like it evolves out of the ways the molecules interact.
So knowing that, it makes complete sense how consciousness would arise. I guess I've just been looking at it wrong.
Physics dictates things move at path of least resistance.
Right.
And just like any life moves to the easiest method of survival.
Well, and that any structure that's being built will eventually break down too.
Right.
Like, and that's all part of the same process,
right.
And that's why like you have a lifespan. right? Like things do, like they try to build up new things, but they only last for so long before they fail and the system breaks apart and something else keeps going.
Yeah.
But that's what reproduction is. The next one is the genetic, if you will, advancement.
Yeah, and reproduction isn't like this clean, direct, linear line. It's like tons of organisms, like mating and tons of different types of patterns, trying all kinds of different things in all different climates.
It's like they talk about extinction. We think about extinction on like animals that we know, like, you know, this tiger is about to go extinct or this whale or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But they talk about that there's microorganisms going extinct all the time because it did not take the path that worked out. You know, it might have been 1,000 years or 1,000,000 years that this organism was working up to, or it could have been 2 days. We don't know.
Well, yeah, there's constantly species dying out and new ones being hybridized, and you know, even the same line just in different places will turn into very different creatures.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not like and I think that it's a you don't want to think of it as like an organism trying to choose the best thing, because it really is just animals having sex, and then whatever baby comes out, and then that baby's now alive in the world and then most of them die.
But do animals not have? Are they not more selective with their mates?
They can be selective, but they're most likely to choose who's around and not being an asshole.
Fair.
There's an instinctual. That's what it's. There's an instinctual selectivity, but it's not a checklist.
It's only based on the options that are presented to you.
You're naturally drawn to a certain thing within that demographic of what you have there available.
Yeah.
You know. Everything else is numbers.
So along this conversation, at some point, we started talking about the nature, not how it started, but what is consciousness? What is that thing? And I have a working idea about this.
Yeah,
Let me toss at you. So I take this with a grain of salt because this was something I experienced on a drug trip. So I was shown, which I don't hold any like serious significance in this. Whatever. But at the time, I was shown. Like unarguably, that in the beginning, the universe just existed, and then consciousness arose like out of nothing. The universe itself became aware of itself, and it was like after a certain period of time, I guess it's like I am profoundly alone. Like it's looking around and it's all there is. So it creates life so it can go down and be those things and pretend that it's not alone. So I think we're all literally the same person. And it's not only that, I think every major religion in the world is saying this.
Yeah, right.
That's what Jesus was saying when he says he's the Son of God. What that means is he is God made flesh, and he's the Son of God because he's aware of that.
Yeah.
And he's not saying I'm the Son of God, the only Son. He's saying we're all the Son of God, which actually just means you're God. So I think that's what consciousness is. I think it's God experiencing itself.
And I think that it didn't develop when humans developed consciousness. I think there was so much consciousness all along. And if you think about how I was talking about a group of cells organizing, and then that becoming of conscious is when you can start forming an image of what the whole thing is based on all the signals you're receiving. And so it would make sense that that's kind of how you come to consciousness.
Do you have switching gears a little bit, do you have any like what do you think is the outcome of humanity? Do you think we die off before we get anywhere? Do you think we become a multiple planet race?
We've gotten very far, and I think that it's worth noting that even if we do go extinct, like wow, what an incredible species. I
completely agree.
I think that it's possible that we could expand galactically, intergalactically even. I think there's a lot of possibilities for humanity. I think that hopefully we continue to exist and evolve and experience new realities with all kinds of other organisms who are also taking this journey.
Yeah.
I hope that we find really interesting life on other planets, and that they have evolved even farther past us and are peaceful, and we get to like hang out and exchange stories, and I think that would be great. And I think that, you know, we could move past a lot of the divisions and things that separate us and act more harmoniously with each other.
That sounds nice. Me too.
Yeah, and I don't know that that's the path that we're on right now, but I do see it as a possibility.
I unfortunately don't think it is.
I don't think it is. I think that but I also think that as a species, or even as a civilization, that we could be perceived as young in our development, and that this is a phase that humanity could evolve through and gain greater consciousness and move to a level that and I think we're constantly doing that. I think we're constantly evolving, and that the way that things are today is in many ways an improvement upon the past, while it's also, of course, tons of destruction and really toxic in many places. But yeah, I do think that I know that me personally, I keep trying to get better and evolve and like work on the things that improve the quality of my life.
And you improve everyone else's life around you when you do that. You know, it's like
well,
Michael Jackson, start with the man in the mirror if you want to make a change in the world.
Yeah. And I also recognize that kind of change takes a lot of time and also requires a lot of experiences, you know, and a lot of mistakes. And I don't think that we should beat ourselves up too much for failing as hard as we do, because I think that is a natural part of evolving and improving.
100%. We are all scared children with no idea what's going on. We're all just bumbling around pretending that we know what's going on. Like,
back to the Morrison poetry, he said, dreams watching each other narrowly.
I like that.
That's always Doug what he said.
That's cool. Yeah, that's, yeah. It's it's a hard time to be alive, but it's also cool. Like, we have to remember where we've been. We have to remember history, because that's the shortcoming I unfortunately see a lot of, is repeated cycles. It's like people don't acknowledge the past. Like, we've tried that. It doesn't work that way.
That's how we do it, though. We keep learning the same lessons over and over until something changes. And so, of course, while we're still in all these problems, you can look back on each one throughout history and go, like, this has been the same problem this whole time. And, like, those are the things that, like, but they don't just go on and on without consequence. Right, so like
things do change. Things have gotten better. There's a lot of things.
There's a lot of great things to be
way better.
So many things to be really happy about right now, for sure.
I mean, in real retrospect, this is one of the technologically best times to live. Because
it's a great time to live. We take a lot of it for granted. You know, like I ate a donut today, and that was really easy. And like maybe 200 years ago, I would have had to make a donut.
Yeah, and as pessimistic as I'm being, that is true. We are in the best time in human history.
How many times have you had to run from a jungle cat in your life?
2 tops.
Every day.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So.
Right.
Yeah, that's pretty great, isn't it?
I've never had to run down an elk. I've never had to get.
For me, it's like I don't really have any complaints about my life. It's kind of like I look around at the rest of the world and the way things were, and it makes me empathetically like, this sucks. Like, we have to. Now, my life, like, pretty good, you know, like, man, you know, even for the people that have it really bad, they have it better than the people 500 years ago, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like, there is a lot to be grateful for. It's just, I feel, maybe it's because I was raised really religiously, but I feel, like, apocalyptic about things. I feel like we don't have a lot of time left. And I'm sorry to bring you guys down. I'm just being pessimistic. I guess I think about this a lot, and it's kind of, it's difficult. So that's why I'm subjecting you guys to it as well.
I was listening to a podcast not too long ago that was, I can't remember who or what it was, but it was on the imminence of societal collapse. And it was really interesting because it wasn't trying to, like, solve the problem or anything. It was just laying out, like, where we're at right now. And it was like, yeah, this looks like a societal collapse is about to happen, and how would you move forward if that were the case?
Yeah.
And I can't remember too much about the implications of the wisdom that was, that they were talking about. But I remember afterwards kind of feeling like even in the societal collapse, like there's still joy in every day. There's still like as much as is uncertain, you're here and you get to choose what to do with your time.
Yeah.
We also have to keep in mind is that a societal collapse is, nation to nation.
Yeah, well, and it's also like, I'm not trying to I don't want to like believe anyone else's predictions based on, because everyone's always predicting the end of the world.
Yeah.
And so
for all history.
Yeah, of course. And I think it's a normal like survival instinct to look at the way the world as though all these things that are a problem could kill us, because individually each one of them could kill many people, and as a whole we're suffering unnecessarily for a lot of different reasons. And so I think it is a tactic that is a survival instinct.
Absolutely.
Acting as though the demise is imminent, and if we don't do something, it's all gonna end. Kind of makes us like try and do some of the things that we need. But the thing is, most of us aren't doing the things that, like, if you thought the world was going to end and that all these things weren't going to be available, like, I don't know, what would you even do about it?
So
would you
personally,
trying to make change anymore?
So, like, for me personally, answering that question, this is what I would be doing, because I feel like this is, except for like helping my personal situation, like getting good at bushcraft and hoarding supplies. For humanity, this is the only thing I know how to do to help. Which I realize you weren't asking me specifically, but that's just my answer. Is communication. I think is super important if we're going to fix it at all.
Yeah.
It starts with just like reaching across the aisle implies a duality, so I don't like that terminology.
Diving down rabbit holes together.
Yeah. Like specifically,
they're dark and scary, and
you have to be willing to specifically do it with people that you disagree with. Like you and I seem to agree with about a lot of things for the most part, but like I like talking to people that I don't agree with at all, and just because like that's rare. We don't do that as a people anymore. We yell at each other on Twitter and Facebook.
Or we just don't listen to each other.
Or just don't listen at all. But it's like, I think a part of that problem is thinking that you already have all the answers, right?
Right.
It's like, I'm well aware that I'm an idiot and that I'm going to have a lot of my ideas changed in the future.
Yeah.
So why, if someone proves me wrong, I literally don't get upset at them. They just did me a favor. It's like, you just helped me. Why would I be mad at you?
Right.
And it's like, it's something I think I see really clearly because I was raised in a religious cult. But like, when you start to identify yourself with your ideas, and then someone attacks those ideas, they're attacking your personality because you've tied those things together.
Totally.
And so I personally, as I've gotten older, I do have one idea that I associate with my personality and my identity, and that's anti-dogmatism, open-mindedness.
Sure.
I like this. I have a saying I like that I'm dogmatic about anti-dogmatism. It's like, yeah. I'm not okay with people that aren't open-minded.
Sure.
It's like, yeah, you have to be, because we're all on the same team, or at least we should be, right? It's like, if we're not on the same, what are we doing? It's like, humanity is the team. It's not. And I guess, like, that has its own dangerous when you start getting into, like, politics and, like, controlling the world. Like, there needs to, if you don't like, the problem with globalism is you don't like a world, if you don't like the place you live, you can't leave. You can't go somewhere else. So that also has its own problems. We're on a rant. We were talking about before I talked about globalism.
It always gets to globalism, doesn't it?
Yeah, it goes back there. Communication. Yeah, like we're already really globally connected.
What are we talking about?
Yeah.
Communication.
Funny.
Like you pointed out that we have this weird nervous system throughout us, so we're already kind of this global creature. And I don't know. Do you think eventually we head that way? Do you think eventually there's one nation kind of thing, or?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I don't think it would be quite that simple, because if you think about, like, I don't think that it's possible for it to evolve to just be only one thing. Like we're talking about evolving from smaller to larger consciousnesses. But I'm not sure, well, yeah, I'm not sure what I'm envisioning is like the whole Earth gaining consciousness as like a planet, like a single human,
Yeah.
Single thing.
It'd be kind of like that, but not quite.
I don't know. Well, so okay.
Because we're already kind of like that, right?
Yeah.
It's like we're already kind of have this global network, and there are certain rules that most of the world abides by. Like we have the United Nations, and there's certain things that, I guess it's not the entire world though. We still have segments of it that aren't connected in that way, and there's plenty of the world that doesn't have internet actually. So.
Yeah. Well, it's like if you maybe there's places in your body that don't have nerve endings, and there's
Yeah.
And like the cells in your body are still alive. They're all alive. Every single one of them is. If you remove cells from your body and put them in a petri dish, they stay alive.
Really?
Yeah. There's a petri dish with cells from a woman who had cancer like 50 years ago. She's dead. She's been dead for a long time, and her cells are still alive in
Holy
a petri
shit.
dish somewhere. So we as beings wouldn't like cease to exist. We may or may not even be aware that we're part of a bigger thing. We might be so preoccupied with our job as the liver processing whatever it is that we're not even thinking about the fact that we're a whole human.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or part of something that's so much bigger that's trying to get to work right now.
I guess that's kind of like having a job in society too. Is like you
well, and if you
this
think
function.
about, if you go out further from where we are and think if the universe was experiencing itself as consciousness, then yeah, planet Earth is like one little spot of life.
Sure.
That like for that entire billions of years that we've been just multiplying and swarming and teeming, the universe is like, oh wow, look at all this nice stuff that keeps happening. Like, look at me, I'm a field, I'm a oak tree, I'm a attorney.
Yeah.
And so then like maybe Earth, we're this atom in the left knee of this cosmic being, and like we're really good at getting upstairs.
Kind of like the concept of, if you look at a solar system that looks like an atom, that our universe could very well just be an atom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of a particle of some other thing in some other universe.
I think scale is another way that we've kind of another fallacy we've created. Because it's like
it has to do with our perception, like with how much information we can take in.
Right? Because it's like from what we can observe, the universe is infinite on that scale, and then it's like from what we can observe, you can go in infinitely as well.
Yeah.
So it's like what the universe is telling us is that everything is infinite. So I would assume that's everything. That's time. That's
and just like we can't really actually conceive infinite.
Yeah.
We can't conceive nothingness. There's no way for us to conceive nothingness.
I think that's another reason I have an issue with like death. Seems like another fallacy to me. It's more of a migration. It has to be, because everything's infinite. Unless that means like because there's everything, that there's also a black hole that eats everything, like consciousness, like existence.
But it would have to
But a literal black hole?
Have you guys seen Everything Everywhere All at Once?
No.
It's a new movie that just came out. So like I guess if everything exists, everything, like we were talking about imagination and like, so everything. Infinity, that would include like things that eat other things, right? So it's like,
of course.
So there were if we're hypothesizing infinity, there is a infinitely sized black hole that eats existence as well, right?
Or just tons of black holes within existence, constantly eating.
Sure, there'd be more than one. Yeah.
Well, we don't have an idea what a black hole does, though.
So I guess what I'm saying, maybe not a black
we
hole.
We don't know what it does. We just know its gravitational field is so hard that light can't escape it.
Yeah. Well, I guess
But where does it go?
black holes do exist. We observe those in the physical universe.
Because if it's a mass that's so heavy that it pulls everything into it, it's not a hole.
Well, so
That
I
is
think
a-
when you die, your cells start to decay. Each of those living things that was like relying on each other to survive, it just like starts to split up, and it becomes no longer a single thing, but back to being a bunch of different things that are.
Carbon atoms.
Yeah, and then maybe it gets eaten by something else, or maybe it just gets cremated, and that energy just burns up and
The
becomes
worms
something
crawl
else.
in, the worms crawl
Yeah.
out.
And then like your consciousness that like you had, because you had this sensory organism constantly sending you an image of the outside world, is no longer receiving any of that.
Yeah. Yep. And yeah, maybe that ceases, but
It
something
goes
else
back
continues.
to- Initially, what I was saying is that's how we design computers. Is that a computer itself is just what it is, and it's incapable of anything until it's given the information. But the only way it can be given information is by an input. And so, therefore, a CPU sitting there is useless because you can't do anything to it.
It's
and,
like its own.
and then also, it can't speak to you without an output, or do anything itself without an output. So without a monitor, you don't know what it's telling you. You know, and it's the
Interesting.
same concept that she's talking about at the very beginning of this. Is that as it develops, it's about communication. Jimmy said it. Communication coming on strong.
Yeah, it's we've been all over the world tonight, and I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but I think we'll leave Alice with a quote I really like, which I think the Beatles said it best: "I am you, and you are me, and we are one, and we are all together." Alice, you can catch Heather with the Absurd at Springwater tonight, and then this Saturday, the Heather Thomas Band at Underdog. Don't be late. I'll be there, so I'll know if you're not there. Thanks again, Heather, for doing this. Appreciate you.
Absolutely, yeah, thanks.
And we'll see you next week, Alice. Bye.